Test. Testing 1, 2. Call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, September 16th, 2024. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we will just do a quick moment of silence honoring the life of Elijah Vu. For that, and now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Amanda.
Mark Bittner.
Here.
Shannon Derby. Here. Bill Leclerc.
Here.
Doug Brandt.
Here.
Tim Petrie.
Here.
Bonnie Shimalunas. Here. Scott Steckmesser.
Here.
Adam Husky.
Here.
Darla Leclerc.
Here.
All present.
Thank you all for that. On to number 4, consideration of any council members' request to participate. Everyone is here tonight, so we can skip over that. And then on to number 5, oath of office and badge pinning of Police Lieutenant Matthew Lutz.
Yeah, just a brief introduction. Matthew Lutzy was a Cleveland native. He lived around here in Manitowoc County, obviously. Unfortunately, went up to Marinette for 9 years of his career. But luckily, we got him back here in Manitowoc County, where he came back. He was both a first responder at Cleveland prior to that, and now he's back again as a first responder. So even outside of work, he's doing his due diligence to help serve the communities that he works and lives at. So with that, he's also been our SRO for the last couple of years at LB Clark, and he's making sure that we have a smooth transition with what we'll announce later as our next SRO. So Matt, if you'd like to come up here and get sworn in.
I, Matthew Lutzy, solemnly swear to help support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Police Lieutenant for the City of Two Rivers to the best of my ability, so help me God. Thank you, Mayor.
First, I'd also like to thank all his family that have been here today. I know there's school staff here. Everybody loves Matt, especially his wife, Amber, who I think is going to pin him.
They always have a good turnout for these promotions, but I don't know that anyone's brought any bigger entourage. Congratulations.
All right, congratulations again. On to number 6, input from the public. If there's anyone here that wishes to address the public, please leave the room.
The public is like, we are getting out of here.
No pressure.
I might pull down and
Okay, as I was saying, input from the public.
That cleared the room.
That could do real quick. If you'd like to address the council about something on this agenda or future agenda, please step to the podium on your left, state your name and address for the record, and you may give your input. And we already have someone ready to go. So go ahead.
Andre Robitaille, 2313 Jefferson Street. I'm going to be reading mine because I don't want to flub this up. So first, I wanted to thank Mr. Buckley and his staff for posting the financial report on the weekend. While I do feel it would have been nice had it been posted with a little more notice, the effort on the weekend was very above and beyond responsiveness. So I really want to thank him and his staff for that. My question to the council is to hopefully either proxy a question to the auditors, or maybe the council or staff already know the answer. It's a topic that honestly comes up in various ways when I'm talking to other residents, and it comes up at least monthly, sometimes more. One of the bullets in the auditor letter states that they'll find any conditions or events that would raise doubts about the city's ability to continue. And clearly from the report, they did not find any reason for concern. The reasons for concern that I've heard, though, are in the city's comments, the managerial section of it. So it'd be interesting to hear more detail about why they aren't an issue or a concern. So the page numbers I'm about to give are from the actual audit financial statement. They're not from the agenda page numbers. Page 16 shows the upswing in equalized value is related to housing market, which if you look at the numbers, they're slightly above Wisconsin increases and roughly equal to the national increases for the housing market. And that's tied to the very large increase in the legal margin for general obligation debt, which is shown on page 15. I'm just going to keep going. On page 17, the city talks about 98. This is where the actual question is going to come in. On page 17, the city talks about 98% of GO debt being due within 10 years. So here's my question, and I'm phrasing this very carefully as it's on the record, and I think it might be related to credit ratings and bond performance. So the answer, I believe, needs to also be kind of careful. Given the things that I just mentioned, are there no concerns about potential issues like slower than expected housing value growth, or delays in TIF projects like West River Lofts, which have continually been delayed? Is that because those things are immaterial to repaying the debt, or that there's contingency plans in place to address those sorts of challenges? Got my question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, could you restate it? I'm sorry, I'm not following it either.
Okay, so when I talk to people, the issue of debt comes up pretty frequently, every 2, 3, 4 weeks, somewhere in there. Some resident I'm talking to talks about our outstanding debt. They talk about how, in their opinion, we have a lot of TIFs open, a lot of TIF districts. So on page 17, I think if I remember right, about a third of the way down the page, there's a line there that says 98% of GO debt is due within 10 years.
Is this the one that?
Audit page 17, yeah.
Unless you updated it since Saturday. Let's go with the assumption.
Yeah, it's on the top in the second paragraph, third line down. Sentence starts in the second.
The short version, I believe, is we have a bunch of TIFs open. The TIFs have to be, those bonds have to be paid back. And the city states that that is roughly 90% of it's going to be within 10 years, it has to be paid back. So in previous pages, if you look at the big line graph that's on there, you see a big uptick where there was, things went south a little bit for a while. We had the Hamilton factory leave, then things are kind of even, and all of a sudden they swing up. Those upswings are in line with the housing market nationally and in Wisconsin, more or less, give or take a few percentage points. So are those sorts of things, or that the TIF district for, I don't remember the number, 717, something like that, for West River Lofts, do those sorts of things have to take place and continue that upswing? Or does West River Lofts have to go well for us to be able to pay back that debt in 10 years? Or are there concerns there? That's kind of the question.
I'm not sure it's a fair auditor question, although if when our auditor presents, she wishes to address it, I won't stand in her way. I would note that when the council typically looks at the budget, while growth and equalized value due to appreciation of existing properties and market value is nice, and it does improve where we are relative to our debt ratio, that's not been a basis for the council's, or primary reason for the council's decisions on new debt issuance. It's been more, what is the impact going to be on our tax levy, the amount of dollars that the city requires from the community to repay that GO debt. That's why we've tried to stay in that $2 to $2.2 million range for GO debt in recent years, trying to retire and pretty close to what we're, issue pretty close to what we're retiring in existing debt. So there's growth is good, but only real growth based on net new construction, new stuff coming in, ideally that isn't in a TIF, so then it can pay the bills elsewhere, is good. So I would not say in any way that our ability to repay existing debt is hinged on some growth scenarios that are projected. Now, debt issued specific to our TIF districts, and I can't enumerate, Andre, the exact amount there. We have some. TID number 12, the hotel, comes to mind. That was a $750,000 borrowing. Debt service on it might be $60,000 a year or so. That was, I believe, a 20-year borrowing. But where there actually has been city debt issued to benefit a TIF project, they're typically in the development agreement as a shortfall provision where the city can turn to the developer and say, wait a minute, we didn't get the agreed upon amount of money necessary to service this borrowing. You need to make us whole for that. And that's, in that case, it's actually the city's investment is secured by a first mortgage, which is kind of surprising on the property. So we have similar arrangements like that in TIFs where we have borrowed money. There are also a good number of our TIF districts where the city has made commitments to TIF grants. And you probably know this, but I'll say it for the benefit of anyone that's watching, where it's a pay-as-you-go. There's a commitment by the city to provide a certain amount of financial assistance, say to Braun Building with their new facility, the trust plant out at the industrial park. But that one is a pay-go, so they're only getting revenue from the revenue stream if indeed they've created enough new value. And if at the end of the period, I think it's 20 years in that one, if it's come up short, it still reads, well, the city has met its obligation and it's paid in full. So it's a mix, and I'm not, if I gave you a number offhand for the amount of outstanding borrowed debt that we have associated with our TIFs, and maybe that is somewhere in the audit, I'd be lying if I just pulled it out of the air right now. But that's a relatively limited portion of our outstanding debt. And in all of those cases, it's secured under terms of a development agreement that usually has that shortfall provision and some sort of security, if that's helpful.
It is very.
Yeah. Now understand the city has some debt and a considerable amount of debt that's considered utility debt or revenue debt, where revenue of the utility is pledged. It's not true general obligation debt where the city's made an unlimited tax obligation pledge. You darn well better repay it just the same. And our debt rating is relatively low using both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, but we're improving on that as our fiscal condition has improved. Some of the utility deficits are being reduced, but with the ability to access bond insurance, we've been able to obtain very favorable rates on recent years. That's my best off the cuff answer there. And there is a statutory limit on the amount of TIF, the amount of your tax base that can be tied up in TIF districts, and the law precludes creating new TIFs if you're over that limit. And I'm sorry, I'm not recalling right offhand, 5%, I think. We're at about 50% of our statutory limit as far as the amount of city equalized value that's tied up in TIFs. So I'd say we're relatively modest there. We have one TIF that is probably going to come up a little short under $30,000 when it comes to its end. And that's number 6, which was created for redevelopment of the old St. Luke's School. We have others that may be carrying deficits now, but that was anticipated, and we're eating away at those as revenue comes in. That's a quick answer. I don't want to steal Ms. Shimalunis's thunder as chair of Finance and Personnel, but actually both she and Mr. Bittner from the committee, and Adam Wood, he probably just didn't catch me tonight, have said, let's also plan, in addition to tonight's report, to invite the auditors in for more of a deep dive at a future personnel and finance meeting. So we've had those discussions in the past. That's, I think, a great idea, so we can more effectively share that information.
Mr. Foreman, to the whole community, after they listen tonight, if they have any questions specifically, they could come to the meeting and participate and ask specifically their questions.
The city council meeting, you mean?
That would be at a personnel and finance
for that
meeting.
understood.
Yes, where we
Yes.
can rifle down, listen to the presentation tonight and analyze, because I spent 4.5 hours reading today, and 4.5. And I got a whole list of questions and I want to ask them, but I think a detailed meeting where we can all participate and get into it and listen would be a better format to ask,
Totally agree.
my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Input from the public? Anyone else? We'll go to council communications, letters and other communications from citizens. Anyone have anything? Adam?
The only thing I heard, and I heard it a couple times, were people asking to go to referendum for a mayor versus a city manager. I was also told to look that up on Facebook. There was some communication on Truers News and Info. And I know I was also contacted by NBC 26 on that same topic, because they must have heard from people as well. So I was just wanting to pass that along and share that with everyone else. And maybe it is prudent to put that on a ballot, maybe in spring, to see what the people want to do. At the end of the day, it's their government, and they should be able to answer that question. If it's put on a ballot and they want to stay with one form, great. If they want to go to a different one, great. But it should probably be up to the people, and that should be something that maybe we talk about at a future meeting, to put that on the ballot probably in spring, because I know we're going to be recruiting for a city manager, because I know at Personnel and Finance, this was before I heard from anyone that it was going to be a big deal that they would prefer a mayor, that we kind of started that process. But I think in due diligence to the voters, they should be able to speak as well.
Anyone else? Yeah, Bonnie.
We had gotten an email from someone talking about the listings of short-term rentals. Well, they mentioned a couple other things, but they thought there were 41 properties that are active short-term rental listings. I'm interested in knowing this myself. So do we know how many Airbnbs we have, and do we know if they have permits? And anyway, according to this financial statement, they told us we have 50. How come the number is always so different?
We've reported 40 some, and I don't know if it's 50 or approximately 50. I guess on that one, I'd say the low 40s up to 50 isn't a big range. Now, if there are 100 or 150, maybe. And that number does change. There's another issue, of course, and council heard about it from Mr. Robitaille at your work session at the end of August, as to whether, there are some other data sources. And it's been 3 weeks tonight, but we as staff do want to follow up with him about looking at some of those, because those indicated significantly higher numbers that fell into that category.
Okay. I have one other thing. I heard from somebody that the mayor of Manitowoc might apply for your job.
You hear all sorts of interesting things.
What?
You hear all sorts of interesting things. Yeah.
I thought everybody else laughs. It is pretty funny. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark?
I heard from several people this weekend blown away by the event of Patty Palooza, so I credit to Mike and the whole rec department. It was a great event, and everyone was ready. Lots of agencies there. A lot of information useful about river environment, our great water system. Noah was there, and it was a very fun day, and I took the paddle and was saved when I got stuck in the river by my 13-year-old granddaughter who got out of her kayak and came up and pulled us up. So it's amazing to see, but it was a lot of fun. Thanks, Mike.
Anyone else?
I would just note, I know the council, through our contact the council mechanism on the website, did get a communication from Mr. Durbrow of the Vanderbilt Arboretum. Some concerns in that about utility service and other city interactions. You undoubtedly saw my reply to him, and I had offered up either and I know we've moved around the work session. Is it the 23rd? Is it the 30th? I offered those 2 dates. He did respond indicating an interest in the 30th. So I'll be reaching out to council. I do think it's important that we meet and address the concerns raised, whether that means that's a special one topic work session and we look at rescheduling finance. I'll reach out to finance committee members. I know members had indicated 1 or 2 days a week when early morning meetings might be an option for that committee. So I do think, and I know I've heard from some of you, it's important that we address those concerns. So wanted that for the record. Yes.
Anything else? Seeing nothing else, moving on to number 8, council reports from boards, commissions, and committees. Anyone have anything? Yes, Darla.
Well, Main Street is still doing the same thing. I don't know if I told you at the last city council meeting, but for the Christmas parade, the theme is going to be Christmas TV. So we'll have like screens in the different storefronts, and somebody might be screening It's a Wonderful Life, and then A Christmas Story, which is hysterical. And so we're kind of going that way. So I think that's going to turn out to be pretty darn good. For EAB, we have a lot of stuff going on. You all know about the posted videos on our website. Just wanted to let you know that probably tomorrow, we're going to have a new one that is posted. We had Shay Tillotson, who is an entomologist. She did a program. It was Insects, Their Place in Our World. And it was really interesting and might change your mind about killing them. You know, they might be pesky, but they serve a purpose. We are going to be talking more about sustainable food and water monitoring in the future. I can't give you much information about that. I just know we're going to address it. Paddlers Park, we are kind of working with Mike Mathis at Parks and Rec, and he'll probably tell you more about it at a later date. And then on our Bee City, it looks like we'll be forging ahead on that. We'll have more information in the future. Update on vegetable gardening in your front yard. It was very successful this year. We had tripled the amount of participants, and I'm already getting questions about if we're going to do it again next year. So I would like to address that maybe at our work session. People want to do this again, and if we let them know now that it's a go, they can really plan for it and really get some nice raised beds in. So I'd like to see us be able to talk about that in the future. And of course, our winter educational series, we have that all locked in. The first one is scheduled for October 10. It might not happen, so November 14th would be the first one. So, but please join us. We've gotten some fantastic speakers.
Awesome. Darla, anyone else? Yes, Mark.
As a result of Chief Dave's fire department report and the increase in the ordinances was necessary because of our cost increase, the Committee on Aging enlisted a number of community resources, attempting communication and we're determined to help assist some of the repeat calls that you're getting as a department to see if we can't work to bring a solution to that and eliminate some. So we're going to continue to work on that and continue to save place to live.
Anyone else? Yes, Bill.
Yeah, we have from the Public Works Committee, the intersection at 22nd and Monroe, over by the hardware store. There's problems there. We didn't really notice any, so we thought we would try increasing the stop sign to 36 inches, making them wider, making it easier to see. So we're gonna.
Anything else? Seeing nothing else, we'll go on to city manager's report. Greg.
First up, under the heading of invited guests, we have Elizabeth McMasters from Clifton Larson Allen LLP, our auditors, and she is presenting a summary report and the document for the 2023 city audit. I'm confident will be available if we set a future meeting for a deeper dive with Finance Committee. Elizabeth, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we can certainly be available for the Finance Committee so that we can, gather some data that's probably some useful information and do that deeper dive. We can look at some 5-year trends, probably even 10-year trends to see some of that stuff all summarized together. Tonight, my presentation doesn't have quite that information, so I'll touch on the highlights from that, but we certainly can set that meeting date. And I'd also like to invite Brian Grunwald. He is the principal on the engagement. I've been in this background on the audit for, it's got to be getting close to 10 years now. But I haven't had the opportunity to meet everybody on council. I know I've spoken to a few people on the phone here and there over the years. So thank you for having me tonight. There we go. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I always recommend that everybody take a look at when you get the audit packet. There is always a loose packet. This is the governance communication that has a very summarized version of everything that goes on, what's changed from the previous year. And it's a good glimpse to tell you what's going on. If things are substantially changing, it's going to be in this letter. So please take a look at that. And then also as, the citizen was able to take a look at the management's discussion and analysis. Those were a lot of the pages that he was referring to in his comments. That's the other key piece of information that gives a glimpse of what happened during the year. I know Cassie and Dave in previous years, they take a lot of time to put that MD&A, we call it, together. So it's got a lot of really great information. So today, my focus is really going to be on that governance communication and going over some of the highlights in there. The whole goal of our audit is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. That doesn't mean that we're going to find every error that's within these financial statements, but we use a risk-based approach based on the standards to tell us, what we got to pay attention to, and then also use our own judgment in that process as well. So as a result of that audit that we applied for the 2023 year, we gave what's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That's the highest mark that you can get. So we believe these financial statements are materially correct. That is no different than what the city has received in previous years. So no change there. Also, the standards require us to give what's known as an internal control report. If we were to become aware of any control issues in the structure that the city has in place, we're required to bring those to your attention. So that's another good indication if any of those control structures are kind of crumbling. Again, there has been no changes since the previous year. There was one finding that we had, again, no change from the previous year, and that is preparation of the annual financial report. It takes a lot of effort, skills, time to put this report together. We do that as a service to the city, so it's just not worth it, the cost-benefit analysis. It's easier for us to do that with all the resources, and we do it every day. So that was the one, internal control finding reporting that we have. Over the years, you know, in our time with working on with Dave, occasionally there would be a misstatement in the financial statements. We'd have to make an adjustment somewhere along the lines. We didn't have any of those, but that has been something that's come up in the past occasionally from time to time. So none in the current year, but it does happen from time to time. Okay, moving on. The required communications, perfect. If there was anything major within these communications, we would have been required to bring those to your attention ahead of this meeting. So basically, no news is good news, right? But just to kind of give you a glimpse of to what those communications would be if anything were happening. If there was any changes in significant accounting policies, those would be summarized. If you read through that governance communication, you'll notice that there was one standard that had to be implemented this last year. The result of that standard, though, is that it did not impact the city's financial statements. It was immaterial for this year, so no impact. It is something, though, that could impact the city in future years, so we'll continue to work with Cassie on that standard in case it were to. You may remember Brian Grunwald from last year speaking on the lease standard, so any lease agreements that the city enters into, they would now have to be reported in the financial statements. This is like the sister standard to that. If the city were to enter into any software agreements, so if you have the right to use a software for a period of 5 years, that would show up like a debt. You know, we owe $100,000 over a 5-year period for the use of this software. So that was a new standard, again, that didn't apply for the 2023 year, but you never know when a new software might come about that could impact a future year. Again, we'll continue to monitor that. If there were any sensitive financial statement disclosures, if we had any difficulties with management, any disagreements with management, those would be reported in that governance communication. There were none in all the years that I've worked with the city, and I know previous shareholders, there haven't been any of those types of issues ever in the past. If we had any material audit adjustments, those would be in some way a summary, or it would show what the actual adjustments are in this letter. So that's a good indication. You know, are there increases in those, decreases in those? It shows you what's going on year to year. If there were any consultations with other accountants, you know, those would be disclosed. We haven't had anything like that. And then the last thing that I want to touch on is ultimately the financial statements are, you know, the city's financial statements. They're not ours as the auditors. So there is a letter within that governance communication, as we do rely on a significant amount of information from management, from the finance department, Greg, even from council, when we're gathering data in order to do the audit. So that letter is in there, and obviously that's a key piece of information by the time that we're issuing the audit. All right, moving on. Here is some financial data, and we have 3 years worth of data here. The first piece at the top is the general fund. Debt service fund is towards the bottom. I won't go into length. I think that finance, personnel and finance committee is a good place that we could get into some of those details. But just a couple pieces of information to note. You know, the general fund, there have been funds that have those negative cash balances, and the general fund is able to sustain those balances at this point with what the cash balance that they have. There are those long-term receivables. Water has been one, a couple of the TIFs and so on, that you'll kind of see that information a little bit later on. That long-term receivable has gone down since the previous year. So the city continues to monitor what those negative cash balances are and continues to pay down on those, make sure those funds are, you know, taking in the revenue that they can, and being proactive and making sure that those balances decrease over the years and that the general fund isn't sustaining those.
But just note, and council members will recall it from last year's budget, we did hit a point this year where the water utilities debt service requirements have dropped significantly. So we expect along with that can come a more rapid improvement. That is the one big remaining interfund receivable that's out there. Smaller than it was, but the water utility had racked up a pretty good deficit because of some delays in PSC with our rate increases and some pretty heavy dollars. So I don't want to make too many comments, but that one is a bright spot. So that should be getting better appreciably over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yes, and all of those things take time. They're never quick fixes, right? So moving on, if you want to keep that. So these are the special revenue funds, nothing too major there. Most of them have positive balances overall. You can see at the bottom, of 2022, it was, just shy of 2 million, and 2023, it's in that same boat. So no significant fluctuations there, across funds.
I would note, I think most, if not all of that deficit shown in the urban forestry at negative $22,000, which is the biggest bracketed number, there was a grant receivable, a forestry grant received this year. Now, we have another one receivable next year, and we've spent the money this year. So just
Timing.
just a forecast. It's pretty small in the scheme of things, but you'll see a deficit there again. But part of that is the lag in grant revenue coming in.
Yes, and there's always lags in those grant revenues based on how the standards are written too. You cannot recognize that revenue if it's not received within 60 days of year end. However, if you incur the expenditures, you did the work, those have to be recognized. So a lot of times we get timing differences with those items. And then moving on into the capital projects funds, this is where you'll see some more of those negative balances, which obviously we'd talk more about in that deep dive. Some of them are decreasing a little bit or at least stayed the same. So that's positive news. And oftentimes, projecting 10-year plans, what those are going to look like, where those TIFs are going to be at. Those can all be key pieces of information, in answering some of those questions that you had. So moving into the electric utility, obviously that's governed by the PSC, a lot of rules and requirements in that realm. Main piece of information is at the bottom of the page, that ultimate rate of return. What is your return on your investment of what you've put into, in your infrastructure and so on. And that rate of return has stayed very consistent over the last few years for the electric utility. Moving into the water utility on the next slide. Yep. So the rate of return on the water utility, again, has stayed pretty darn consistent. And that's the one that I know that, Dave had been watching with the PSC and so on. We've seen some more fluctuation in recent years with what the PSC has allowed due to inflationary rates. And that could be something that we look at with a deep dive too in that finance committee meeting. So, and sewer utility. That one, the change in net position at the bottom, that one has stayed in, it's gained a few years now. So that one, no concerns there. Okay, so summary information, and then we'll get into the current and future environment. So obviously ARPA, that's been a hot topic, the spend down of those funds. I'm sure where the city has made progress over the last, 8-9 months, it's probably greatly different from where we were as of 12/31. I know the city was working with Manitowoc with the matching of those funds. The city will likely enter into what's known as a single audit, meaning if you spend over $750,000 in federal grant money, it triggers a single audit or a compliance audit. So that's not necessarily where we're looking at the dollars that occurred. It's what you spent it on. Did you check that box? Did you get this signed? Those types of items. So we follow the federal regulations and what they want us auditing for that. So I believe it was planned that you spent the $750,000 in 2024. So we'll take a look at that for the next audit. And that'll be a new, I don't think ever since I've been on the audit, you guys have had a single audit. So that'll be another component to the audit report next year is, the results of that testing. I can tell you that over since COVID and ever since these dollars have been, distributed, many municipalities have entered into that single audit realm that they hadn't been. Usually it's not a perfect system right out of the gate just because it's not something that, you instantly have the control structure in place. It's a learning curve, right? I think everybody can understand that with how quickly COVID occurred and the grant dollars that happened. So we'll have the results of that audit. And yeah,
I was just going to comment again, the deadline for having those funds obligated is the end of this year. And that, as I understand it, has been accomplished with the contracts you've awarded, most notably the scattered site lead lateral replacement where the county's matching us on the public side anyway. And then you have to finish spending those dollars by the end of 2026. So we'll be spending them at least through a good portion of 2025, but they are entirely obligated at this point. I would say encumbered, but obligated was the
word
term that ARPA uses.
Yes, yes, perfect. Okay, and then just quickly, new accounting oh, yes,
Could
go
you
ahead.
explain rate of return? I don't always remember financial terms.
Yeah,
This was earlier under water utility, sewer utility, and so on.
the water and the electric utilities, yep. So the PSC has a formula in place that's taking a look at, you have infrastructure that is built in order to support your utilities, and what rates are you charging and how much are you setting aside in order to replace those utilities in future years. So they restrict the amounts of that you can earn on that, so to say. And so that's what, the rate of return that the city is comparing over the years. If places are getting into low rates of return, it's an indication that you need to raise your rates so that you will have the funds available to replace that infrastructure one day. Hopefully I'm explaining that well enough on the fly here. I can show you the calculation too in a different report, not in this one, but yeah. Does that make sense? Or any other questions?
Making money to apply to debt service and capital
Yes,
expenditures that are
yes.
sort of below I'm not an accountant, but are sort of below the line when it comes to the utilities. That's the balancing act, not to preach, but that you play as council members. Nobody wants to hear about higher rates,
Correct.
but people do have an expectation that you're going to be good stewards of their investment in our utility. I know sometimes that's hard to communicate, but at the end of the day, it's a public utility and asset of the community, and the reliability of that service, the safety of the product delivered or taken away in some case. Oh, they don't regulate that at PSC though. Is a function of the rate structure that supports it. You want to be good stewards on how the money gets spent too, but I'll say this council over the years has made some tough decisions there, but they're in the best interest of the financial standing of the utilities. And in the scheme of things, that's important.
Yes, and the PSC restricts how high that rate of return can be. You couldn't be just making a ton of money either. So those rates of return that were in those were right where you want to be and where the PSC would allow you to be. Good question. Okay. And then just a couple of new accounting standards. I won't go into the details of these, but just a little bit of information in case this does come out. One of the new standards that's coming up, it really took a look at the definition of what a compensated absence is. So traditionally, those were very simple things like sick and vacation time. And are there buckets of that might have to be paid out in future years, either upon retirement, or so on. So with this change in the standard, because there are so many different types of what qualifies as a compensated absence, military leave, parental leave, anything in that realm, it's looking at the history of those types of leave and does a liability need to potentially be recorded? I wouldn't imagine that from the city's standpoint that this would be a very huge change in the standards. What I wouldn't be surprised is that we might need to be looking at some of the nuances that are written into policies. Some of that wording might get a little bit dicey with how this standard is written. So don't be surprised if those policies are being scrutinized in this upcoming year with this new standard coming into place. So that'll be something that we'll work with Cassie and the rest of finance to really understand what types of leave the city has and if there are any impacts that need to be addressed with the implementation of the standard. So, and then the other one is the GASB 103, which is the financial reporting model improvements. We prepare the financial statements as a non-audit service to the city. So largely that will, we'll kind of take a look at that, make sure that the city stays compliant with those standards. From what I've heard, it was a really great, they were kind of shooting for the moon with everything they wanted to change. And I think it's kind of been toned down as the actual issuance of this standard occurred. So I don't think it'll have as great of impacts as they were maybe insinuating to begin with, but that one isn't out for another 2 years, I think it is. So we'll take a look at that as that occurs. So.
Probably only a small piece of that compensated absences thing, but on your agenda tonight, we've got a small amendment related to that policy that was adopted earlier this year, effectively for our non-bargaining unit employees, phasing out comp time and any ability to carry over year-end comp time balances. We've always been in compliance with FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act, with the caps on what can be carried over. But that still is not an insignificant number. So we're on a path over the next 3 years to basically zero out those balances by paying them if need be at year end. So, or that will be one of
that will be
the auditors look at GASB 101.
Yes, yes.
Like that, GASB 101. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, when I started, we were at 68, so we've jumped. So, and lastly, I just want to thank everybody at the city. I can tell you that it was a pleasure working with Dave when he was in his role for a number of years. And now we're looking very much forward to working with Cassie and obviously with Greg over the years. Everybody works to roll up their sleeves, get us the questions answered. And it is not a short list of items that we ask for. And they are hard questions that we are asking. And sometimes it takes a lot of research to figure them out. Dave had the parting gift of implementing a very large GASB standard before he went. And I know I thanked him to his face, but I just want to recognize him for that because he really went out with a bang on that one. So we really appreciate the city's efforts in working to get through the audit. So, and if there are any questions, please let us know, or, we can set up that meeting and look at some of the data that, would be helpful to answer any questions too during that meeting. So.
Well, we don't typically televise committee meetings. That might be a good one. I think it's an educational process. So
certainly
sometime in the fourth quarter of this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of other cities that you work with so we have a feel for your expertise.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually on Brown County's audit, Outagamie County. Oh, okay, let me think. Cities that I've worked with. I work with a number of larger villages, Village of Greendale in the southern area. Let me think. Who else? I've worked with Marinette County. Those would be my large ones. And then I work on a number of municipalities, Village of Hobart, City of De Pere. Oh, that's another city, City of De Pere, with Pam over in that area. She was previously at the City of Green Bay. So, yeah.
Questions?
That's a date.
Is that the?
Well, I think we'd have to check their schedule. I think Greg said sometime in the fourth quarter.
I maybe the very next person on finance committee, we can look at schedules and see what might work. I'd be a shot in the dark tonight for me, I know. And I expect we'd want to coordinate with Brian's schedule as well.
Yes, I would definitely want to touch base with Brian Grunwald and take a look at our calendars. I know there's a lot of meetings going on coming up. Yeah, so we can certainly look at that. Okay.
All right. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for coming in. Appreciate it. So we are looking though for a motion to receive this report and place on file. Anyone? Bonnie?
I'll make that motion to
Thank you.
receive and file.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Second by Bill. Any council discussion? No council discussion? Okay, then this will be an all in favor. So all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all. Back to you, Greg.
Keep the manager's report short as I can here. On the personnel front, a fair amount of news. As you know, we had 3 vacancies arise midsummer. in the police department. Pleased to report that Chief Meinert and his staff have identified 3 finalist candidates that were recommended to the Police and Fire Commission when they met last Wednesday to extend conditional offers. Those have been extended to the 3 finalist candidates, and I expect at one of the October meetings, Chief Meinert will be introducing our new officers. One or more of them may still have the academy in front of them, but very, very pleased that quality candidates came forward. Fire department, there has been 1 vacancy for a while there. That process has been completed. There is a recommended hire, and Chief Murrock will be making that recommendation to the Police and Fire Commission. Is that Wednesday of this week?
We are working.
Okay, very good. That'll get posted. We, as you're aware, re-advertised the opening for City Planner Community Development Director. That deadline is this Friday. We have some, I'd say, some resumes worth looking at in hand. We'll see if it's usually interesting what comes in a day or 2 before the deadline. So anyway, we're still accepting applications there. And the administrative assistant in the city manager's office, also deputy city clerk, Lisa Keene, will be retiring after the presidential election in early November. Still breaks my heart. But last Friday was the deadline. We will be sifting through those applications this week to get some interviews lined up, because we do want, to the extent possible, to have an overlap and transition period there. You saw all the folks from LB Clark wishing Officer Lutzy the best in his promotion to lieutenant after serving as their school resource officer. The police department also recently announced that Officer Seth Tobeson has been selected to serve as the new school resource officer at LB Clark. So we put a high value on that partnership with the Two Rivers Public Schools. They've always come to the table with a very fair contribution to the cost of those 3 positions. And I know our police department puts very high value on that relationship with our schools. So that's all I have at this point in the area of staffing and personnel. Our big public works capital project for the summer, Roosevelt Street. It's still within the overall timetable. It's just really hard to sit in your house and see the main line that has been paved and nothing happens for 2 weeks. We've heard from a few of those folks. I expect you all have too, but we are within the overall time frame for completion by the middle of October. Last week, the parking lane and curb and gutter got completed along most of the main line. This week, there's a fair amount of work on intersections, following up then with driveway approaches, sidewalks, curb ramps, and carriage ramps. That's that little piece of sidewalk that gets you from the sidewalk to the curb that a lot of older homes have. Those get replaced these days on projects. We slipped up on that on a few in the past. If completion timeframe allows for it, we have requested that the contractor pursue a change order for sodding of the terrace areas instead of planting them and then shaking our heads along with the residents at what it looks like next spring. So, but that we have to be able to do that by the end of September, although who knows with this year's weather, but typically by end of September. So that's coming along well. Hopefully some of the tree planting grant money that Mike Mathis has lined up can be put to good use on those wider terraces on Roosevelt next year. I hate to even say it, but get ready. Leaf cleanup is coming. And right now the schedule calls for leaf pickup to start October 14 and weather permitting continue up until December 1. Election is drawing ever closer. The national general election, presidential election. Absentee ballots are in. They are getting put in envelopes, and on Thursday, the 19th, all requests on file will be in the mail. That might mean you're going to see the lights burning late in the clerk's office and the deputy city clerk who gets back from vacation tomorrow and gets pressed into action. And additional absentee ballots will be mailed out daily as more requests are received. You may apply for an absentee ballot by sending a paper form. You can't just walk in and hand it over until closer to the election. Amanda will have that reminder on a future election. We do encourage people to utilize myvote.com, which is a very easy portal to enter your application for an absentee ballot. But
Greg?
Yes.
myvote.wi.gov.
Oh, my goodness. No wonder it didn't populate when sorry, we will correct that. It's myvote.wi.gov. Lord knows what .com is.
When it says that they have ballots for requests on file, does that mean people have requested those in years past and they automatically get them?
If they're indefinitely confined, it continues. Otherwise, people have requested them already for calendar year purposes and this election specifically.
Okay, how do people get off that list if they have if they are deceased then?
If they're deceased, we get notified from the Register of Deeds, from different state entities that we have
Okay.
to remove them from the list.
Okay. Thank
Staff
you.
also monitors the obituaries, so there are multiple sources for keeping the voter rolls accurate. I apologize for that error. We'll get that corrected. Mike, could you speak briefly to Canoe Palooza? I have heard rave reviews. We just got a couple slides here on sponsors and presenters that had displays there. And we've also got a few action photos on the next slide.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, on Saturday we had our first Paddlepalooza event ever. Probably right around 100 people came throughout the activities for the entire day, between the main paddle float that started at 10 o'clock, and then lots of educational activities and education sessions about kayaking. Then we also had a sunset paddle too as well. So lots of awesome partners that came out for the educational tables. The big one that I have to put a major thank you for is the Northeast Wisconsin Paddlers. That group is a nonprofit that has people that really love to go kayaking. And so they're some of the most qualified people probably in the state of Wisconsin to take you out kayaking. They guide trips in the Apostle Islands and on Lake Superior, and there's people with like serious whitewater credentials in that group, and they really made it possible for us to have such a good event. So thank you to all the partners. Wisconsin Coastal Management Program also threw in a $500 sponsorship for us. Rotary was spectacular to come out and sell drinks. Yeah, it turned out to be a really awesome day.
Some of the activities shown there, the launch at Paddlers Park, or excuse me, at Vets Park, very busy. You know, this is so cool too, because outdoor recreational opportunities are a huge quality of life factor for residents and attracting residents. And also this is part of community economic development. Here we are in the midst of these great water resources, outdoor hiking, biking resources with our trails, and to have our rec department, in addition to doing the standard things, we're still doing T-ball and all the leagues and everything else, but tying into these outdoor recreational activities is huge. So thank you. Well done. Speaking of well done, Joe, do you want to speak to this one briefly? Totally unscripted, so I'm dragging him up here. But tell us a little bit. We saw this amazing car driving around town, and it took a little bit of sleuthing and tracking down to find the story behind it.
So the owner of this car is Dawn from Red Forest Inn. We got a glimpse of it a couple of weeks ago and then posted it on Facebook, wondering who was the owner, and the tourist community had a lot of responses. So I reached out to Dawn. We arranged for a photo shoot last week. She was gracious enough to share the story behind it. So this is her original car, and if you see the photo that's on the door, the driver door, the tour fell in love with the area. And so she's paying tribute not only to the love of community that she has here in TR, but to her past husband. Now she wants that memory to live on. So I think community spirit and what she's done to support everything that we do within the community, and as you know, she sets the bar high for in her efforts there at the Red Forest Inn.
Thanks for sharing that, Joe. Upcoming events, Leicester Public Library book sale. Time to get some reading materials for the upcoming winter, and that is during regular library hours this week, Thursday through Saturday. And Thursday, books and music CDs are 50 cents, audiobooks and DVDs are $1. Fridays, buy one, get one. They're always marketing over at Leicester Library. And you can fill a bag on Saturday. For $2, you get a reusable bag. So to Jeff and his staff, get on over there, pay a visit to the library, and pick up some great reading material. My wife tells me I can't pick up any more cookbooks because I don't cook. I just like looking at the pictures. Would remind people that on the reval project, order review is coming up September 25th, scheduled for 4 p.m. minimum of 2 hours here at City Hall. Not sure how that ended up in the midst of upcoming events, probably operator error. If that wasn't fun enough, coming to board of review, in addition to the library book sale, this coming weekend is Ethnic Festival weekend, brought to you by Two Rivers Main Street and the generosity of a number of community sponsors. Opens with a parade of flags from 9 to 10 a.m. and welcoming comments. The lineup on the main stage there, as listed, includes the Fox Valley Latin Dancers, Patty Grass Irish Band, Cat Plan, and the Hayes Boys, food and craft vendors up and down the main street. There's also other great stuff happening in the community. On Ethnic Festival Saturday, Metalware's annual tent sale, 8 to 2 over at Metalware. I know Lakeshore Rock and Gem has an artist fair going on their site, and it's also Oktoberfest over at Cool City Brewing. I may have missed some, but that's what's great when you have local businesses tying into a festival that's bringing thousands of people to the community. Another project that's gotten some pretty positive feedback on Facebook and other places is the sidewalk widening project on the Washington Street Bridge. That's, of course, a budgeted capital project for this year, being paid for with local funds from TID number 12, the Downtown Hotel TIF district or tax incremental district. Council knows this, but glad to share with the public that the sidewalk is being widened by 3 feet to improve safety for walkers and bicyclists who use the bridge. In Two Rivers by ordinance, bicycles can travel on the bridges. And if you follow Mariners Trail north into downtown or back south out of downtown, I think at this location, most people are especially glad for that provision because it's a little hairy there dealing with bicycles, cars, if you're on the street. That 3 feet has to come from somewhere. Yes, the lanes on the bridge are getting narrower, but they still, in final form, will be as wide as the lanes on Washington Street to the north. That work is being done, like I said, locally in advance of next year's Memorial Drive resurfacing project. That project will include resurfacing of the bridge traffic lanes, which are DOT's responsibility. The other piece of this, but it will have to come after the DOT work is done, the budget for TID 12 does include funding at a minimum to pursue pedestrian activated crossing signals at 12th and Washington, or 12th Lake and Washington by Conuts and McDonald's there. And depending on where this project comes in, we may be able to also address pedestrian activated yellow flashing signals for the crosswalk at Madison Street, which is pretty heavily used by folks coming from the center and northern part of town accessing Mariners Trail. So some, I think, good projects being coordinated with the state DOT project. And Matt, we can have more information on a future agenda, but their goal is to get that resurfacing done as early as possible in the spring, summer seasons, is what we've heard.
The bridge work is supposed to be complete.
Again, just to repeat on Mike, the bridge work slated to be completed by Memorial Day weekend. Work on Memorial Drive will extend more into the summer, but thank goodness it's a 4-lane highway, so there will be some, I'll say, diverting of traffic, but within Memorial Drive. So people won't be detoured around this project. And that's a relief because it seems like every summer somebody's getting detoured around us. Just might slow things down to 45 miles an hour or so out of Memorial Drive. A little sarcasm there, sorry. We would also extend congratulations to K9 Zanti and his handler. You probably saw the Facebook post on this that came out from TRPD. They were called to assist in response on a recent traffic stop where the K9 officer did detect drugs, and that resulted in the arrest of 2 individuals on drug-related charges. So that investment in that amazing K9 is only possible because of the generous support of the community That's something the PD made clear going into it, and we're showing real tangible results. He's also a big hit on National Night Out and at the schools. But this is certainly one of the many benefits of our K-9 officer. The final Friday Night Live on the Schmidt Brothers stage in Central Park West is coming up a week from Friday, September 27th, 7 to 9 p.m. when the Footastics take the stage downtown. We again thank all of the sponsors for Friday Night Live downtown, including Nicolay Bank, Cobblestone Hotels, Two Rivers Business Association, and Two Rivers Main Street. That's been well received. The band that was down here last Friday, a little outstanding weather doesn't hurt either, but there were easily 200-300 people in the park. There was a really good turnout on Friday night for some excellent music. Hope to see that repeated next year. And we'll invite Mr. Mathis to the microphone again to report some good news when it comes to continued pursuit of upgrades at Neshota Park.
Again, earlier this year, we applied for a Wisconsin DNR stewardship grant. Stewardship grants are one of the few opportunities we have to get grant funding for meaningful park improvements. In this case, we had a really good master plan put together for Neshota Park that helped us out a lot. So we been notified that we'll be receiving a $209,500 grant from Wisconsin DNR for continued improvements to Neshota. That does require a 50% match, so the total project cost would be $419,000. So Greg and I have been sitting down working through capital and how we make that match happen for this next year. But it'll make some pretty significant changes to Neshota Park according to the master plan. So I'm going to step back.
I apologize. Yeah, we put it behind you there.
So the main pieces are this, what we're calling the spine trail from, this is the concession stand at Neshota Park that'll come across the Garfield, trying to encourage more access for the streets, lower some parking issues to just get people to park easier. These parking bays along Pierce Street with another path connecting those to the beach. That one was also important because we see so many people walking and biking and right in the middle of Pierce Street on our busiest days. And so we'll be able to more safely move people from parking in farther back areas of the park and the neighborhoods into the park easier. Then it'll fund 2 small picnic shelters with concrete base for that, grills and tables. It'll do a renovation of the interior of the restroom back by the horseshoe pits. Some stormwater swales along the new parking areas, native plantings, and kind of this left side of the park shown on the screen. And I think I covered everything. There's a lot of pieces to it. So yeah, it was great to have a good plan to move forward. Tons of community input went into making this happen. So proud to be able to continue the momentum on Neshota, and it's just the absolute gem of our city, I think. So continuing to use it for the benefit of all is a good thing. So,
beauty of investing the time and resources into a good plan, showing an intent to follow up on that plan. You remember it was last year the city led and fully paid for the new playground. We've seen some incredible results from that. It's crowded all the time. This takes the master plan another step forward. And seeing how Pierce Street is also a street, as well as having new parking opportunities along it, I've also asked Public Works in preparing their capital budget to at least address Pierce from 21st out to Zlotnick so that improvements to that stretch can tie into those new, I'll call them parking pods. No new parking lots. That was not endorsed in the plan, but just, I would say, more organized parking along that Pierce spine. And maybe look at a couple speed tables in there to make sure it stays safe for folks that are crossing. So job well done, Mike, you and your staff, and reflecting back on a great job by the advisory rec board. Thank you.
Rick, I think it's worthy to note too, thanks to you and your staff for continuing to maintain the beach from the shore down to the Coast Guard station, because that's becoming a well-used, very attractive addition, and it probably gives us the longest beach. And
does.
Thank you for that too.
Good stuff happening. That's it. We just closed with another picture from Paddlepalooza, that sunset paddle on the West Twin that Mike had referenced. That's my report tonight, Council.
Excellent, thank you all. On to the consent agenda. Under A, we have presentation of minutes. We have 3 of them. One is from the City Council work session from August 26, 2024, City Council regular meeting for September 3rd, 2024, and a City Council special meeting from September 11th, 2024. The recommended action will be a motion to waive reading and adopt the minutes. Under B, we have minutes of meetings. There are 6. We have Public Utilities Committee from September 3rd, Public Works Committee from September 4th, Committee on Aging from August 5th, Plan Commission from September 9th, Advisory Rec Board from August 14th, and Police and Fire Commission for September 11th. Recommended action is a motion to receive and file. Under C, we have applications and petitions. We have one of those. It's a landscaping tree removal license for Bonsai Tree Service, 3207 Whistle Lane in Two Rivers. The recommended action will be a motion to approve the application and authorize issuance of the license. Under D, we have department reports for August. There are 10. They're for City Clerk, Electric, Fire, Inspections, Library, Public Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Safety, Tourism, and Water. The recommended action will be a motion to receive and file. And then under E, we have summary of verified bills for the month of August for $3,410,120.24. The recommended action will be a motion to receive and file. The recommended action for the consent agenda will be a motion to approve the consent agenda with the various actions recommended. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second by? Thank you, Bonnie. Any council discussion? Seeing none, this will be an all in favor. Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for that. On to 11, City Council formal items. Under A, we have amendment to Personnel Policy, Appendix B, Compensatory Time Policy, further amending that policy to provide that compensatory time may not be accrued during the month of December. Any overtime hours worked in December will be compensated as paid overtime. Greg.
Okay. Again, my earlier comment when the auditor was here, earlier this year, Amanda brought an amendment first to the Personnel and Finance Committee, then approved by Council, intended to phase out over a 3-year period our existing practice of allowing comp time or accrual of paid time off at time and a half in lieu of paid overtime. Right now, with what had been a maximum accrual of 240 hours. That comes down in steps, 80 hours less each year, with the goal at the end of 2027, being down, 2026, I'm sorry, thank you, being down to 0 at the end of the year. One piece of that was discussed during the amendment process but was not included in that policy when presented was to make it work, you almost need to take a breath in December and make sure that you're getting down to the target balance at year end, whether it's 160, 80, or 0 at the end of 2026. So the intent here is to say, basically, if you work overtime in December, that will be paid overtime, not going into the comp bank, so we can clear the decks of any necessary comp time before year end. All the work on it was done by Amanda working with our labor attorney, so she can answer questions beyond that. But we're well along in implementing this policy. This was just a final piece.
Any questions for Amanda? Otherwise, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the amendment as recommended by the City Clerk, Human Resources Director, and City Manager.
So moved.
Thank you, Darla. Second by Shannon. Any council discussion? Nothing. This will be a roll call vote. Amanda.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
Doug Brandt,
Aye.
Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas,
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister,
Aye.
Adam Mahusky,
Aye.
Darla Leclerc,
Aye.
Mark Bittner,
Aye.
Shannon Derby. All in favor.
Thank you. On to B, ordinance to amend various sections in Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code Code entitled Fermented Malt Beverages and Intoxicating Liquors in Chapter 1 through 2 entitled Fees to provide requirements and standards for alcohol licenses.
I know enough to say I'm out of my element on this one, and this was again an initiative of our clerk, who I will let explain it, with the able assistance of our city attorney if need be. Amanda.
So with the changes to Act 73 that was brought up previously this year when we talked about the changes with the temporary licensing, there's also increase in background checks that have to happen with the police department. So with that, we can have a $20 background check fee that we are adding to the code. This is not on any type of temporary licenses. This is only for our permanent licenses. So all of our taverns, our liquor stores, mini marts, etc. I can't speak to how much time that the police department spends on background checks, but they have to go through every single member or officer on that license and provide background checks under the new laws passed by the state. So that takes some time. Also with this, since we have a limited amount of Class B intoxicating liquor licenses, we're kind of going to get ahead of the game, and instead of running out of them, if we would get to that point and they're being tied up at establishments that are only open a day or don't have an intent to use it right away, we have added the 60-day open requirement on there. So within the licensing year from July 1st to June 30th, the establishment has to be open at least 60 days. And then other than that, there was just a bunch of, seems like errors in the code of missing the quotations around things. So we updated that as well.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Amanda?
Amanda, the addition about, I'm on page 614B, the sealed containers of intoxicating liquors, was that sort of the cocktail to go thing that came up during COVID or?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
beer to go, cocktail to go, what have you. And so our ordinance is just, that's an example where we're just catching up with the state
Correct.
statute.
Yep, we were behind on that.
Thank you.
Yes, Adam.
Why the 60 days?
It was a number of days that we picked. Greg and I talked about it. No specific reason of 60 days.
So how would that affect like the KC Club that's open on Fridays?
Question.
How would that possibly affect Sepia Chapel if they're not open exactly 60 days when they have events? Or anyone else that would come in that still has a permanent business that may not be open or serving that many days
I mean, that's
out of the
something
calendar year.
too that we discussed that, I mean, the attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, that we are enforcing going forward. So not anything past. And it's something that always council can.
Because I mean, there's always been talks about the Veterans Club getting back together too, so that would be a future one. I know they've been looking for a building like the VFW. I think that's a little too strict.
That may well warrant looking at, honestly.
I mean,
I think you
I
see the
understand.
general
I know the
intent,
point
yeah.
is to be open days. I just think 60 might be a bit much for some of our clubs that aren't going to be open that often.
Or some, I don't know, the attorney and Amanda could look further at it, but some sort of carve out for community groups, fraternal groups, veterans organizations, which tend to be the places that are only open maybe for a Friday fish fry and an occasional special event. But clearly the intent was, because liquor licenses are part of the economic engine in any community, face it, not to have them tied up. Because we used to have businesses that made a point of, I don't think we have any right now, but opening one day a year just for purposes of maintaining that license. And if we get up to the point where we're having to charge how much for reserve licenses?
Just to access the reserve license, it's $10,000.
How many availables do we have before we're into that category?
Right now, I think we have 8 left.
8 left.
Mhm.
I think we
We're
should
not up
check
against
with
it.
Sepia Chapel though as well, to make sure that they're doing that 60 days, because that could very well affect them as well in a negative way that would affect the cities.
Question.
It's a good point, Ed. And going into it, could we change from 60 to 30, 52 weeks a year? I mean, then it covers, I would think, most fish fry events and things.
I'm open to whatever changes. It was just something that we needed to get going on.
Do you recall, Manitowoc has a similar ordinance. Do you recall the relevant number in theirs?
There's a 60 days and 4 hours for each of those 60 days. Mhm.
They probably did grandfather the existing licensees, and maybe they all comply with that. I don't know.
Oh, I believe a couple people, they had lose their license, but they're over their max, or they were close to it at max.
That's probably 20 years ago now. The Tavern League did that. They cut, if I recall, they cut the number of unused licenses we have. They didn't. The legislature did their bidding and cut the number of unused available licenses in half, and then said anything beyond that, it's a reserve license at $10,000. So
It goes based on your population from December 1st of 1997.
really,
Yes.
when prohibition was repealed, I don't know what that.
Your
I would-
population and the amount of licenses that you had issued, I believe.
Interesting. So council could amend it on the floor if you wish, or if you wish to table it for some more information to be gathered, that would be appropriate as well to bring back at the next regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve it, but to have it at 21 days.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I saw Tim's hand up, so Tim will second it. Any council discussion?
I have one more question.
Yes.
Under page 103, temporary agent questionnaire by all officers and members of an organization. Is it necessary that you have to have every member in the organization? Because I know a lot of members don't even participate with that questionnaire, and
It
That
is
state
what
rule?
is required by the state of Wisconsin
okay.
under the new act. Yep.
Became effective this year. It's really unpopular, I know, with the.
If they file
does-
it once, can it be, doesn't have to file every single event, can be reused, right?
Well, they have to file the paperwork every time, so we advise them, if you have your members fill out the paperwork, keep the original and make copies every time.
Let it be known, we didn't dream this stuff up. This came from our state legislature and governor's signature.
This application, are these applications online, so it'd make it easy for them?
It is online, and the whole packet of information on what is needed is on there as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Doug Brandt,
Aye.
Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas,
Okay, are we voting on this change or are we voting on the amendment? Is this a two-step thing?
The
No,
motion
okay.
was
I made
made.
the motion to accept it as is, but change 60 days to 21 days.
Okay, aye.
Scott Steckmeister,
Aye.
Adam Mahusky,
Aye.
Darla Leclerc, Mark Bittner,
Aye.
Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
all in favor.
Okay, thank you all for that. On to C, recommendations from Plan Commission meeting of September 10th, 2024. Number 1, request to rezone 1509 19th Street, parcel 053-000-050-030-.09 from business B1 to residential R3, submitted by Joan Johnson, applicant and owner.
Okay, and I was going to note, these are things you usually see on the consent agenda, but there were several interesting aspects to these ones, so that's why they're here. The Plan Commission at its meeting at its September meeting last Monday, the 9th, and this was tabled from the August meeting. This rezoning request is former dental office on 19th Street. It's currently zoned B1 business. It's sandwiched between the old Evans department store. It was Dr. DeStephan's office for a time. Sandwiched between the old Evans department store, which is zoned B1 business, and a whole string of 4 or 5 single family residential properties. They might be 2-family for all I know, to the west. So it's currently zone B1. It has adjacent properties that are either B1 or R3, which is 1 and 2 family zoning. Adam I think would characterize it the same. The Plan Commission was kind of on the bubble on this one. There's not a compelling reason that property has to be rezoned residential. There is a point that there's a shortage of housing in the community and everywhere. On the other hand, I certainly would expect for a lot of our B1 up and down Washington Street and on major corridors, probably want to keep the business zoning, which by the way does prohibit residential uses on the first floor. And that's why the request. These folks, the owner wants to convert it to a residential use. The Plan Commission struggled with that, came up with what we felt was a good solution, respectful of the neighborhood, that said there's a recommendation that the property be rezoned as requested, on condition that the concrete pavement covering the front yard area from the front of the building out to the sidewalk, that's fairly short front yard there, and then the terrace in the public right-of-way between the sidewalk and curb be converted to turf grass. I did subsequently discuss that Plan Commission recommendation with our city attorney. Sean may be able to speak to that, but my memo in the agenda does talk about concerns about the concept of contract zoning, which is a term in the law, and down the road, how do you enforce something like this? Because if, say, it actually was converted to grass, but then it became concrete again as to the front yard, there's nothing in our zoning code that says your front yard has to be turf grass. That's why I am offering, in light of that additional feedback after the meeting, that I'm recommending council refer this back to the Plan Commission for further review. And Sean, Attorney Griffin, would you care to speak to this?
Yeah, so in terms of this type of action here, the primary concern is, as Greg mentioned, that this could possibly be seen as contract zoning. That's not permitted under Wisconsin law, and it really delves into the point that Greg also raised, that there's no way for the city to enforce such an agreement. The city zones a property as such, the property is entitled to that zoning. There's no permissible mechanism as passed to enforce those types of restrictions. There are other alternative mechanisms that can be used by the city in order to achieve similar goals, but that would need to likely go back to the Plan Commission in order to be passed pursuant to those alternative methods rather than as passed, which there is contract zoning or runs close to being contract zoning in the point where it would expose the city to liability.
So any questions for Greg?
Sean,
Yes.
can you review the options that the Planning Commission could consider to move this forward? So we
If this
prevent.
goes back to the Plan Commission, there's a substantial case law in Wisconsin that says municipality cannot contract zone, but they can look favorably upon voluntary restrictions to a property. The primary example of this is that a municipality might say that a certain development is not approved as proposed, but then the developer can go and put deed restrictions or other private mechanisms that restrict the use of the land. And that makes the city can look favorably upon that and approve after certain mechanisms are used there. And it follows the same logic that makes contract zoning improper, is when there's a private remedy to enforce those types of restrictions, then the municipality has a mechanism to enforce those restrictions. Whereas in the case of contracts, the municipality would not have that same ability.
Basically self-imposed restrictions that would probably be documented in a recorded document at the Register of
Deed.
Deeds.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll look for a motion. Second by, thank you, Doug. Any council discussion? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Could you
Oh, hang
read
on.
the motion again?
This is a motion to refer this back to the Plan Commission.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Okay. Now, Amanda.
Tim Petrie. Bonnie Shimalunas.
Aye.
Scott Steckmisser.
Aye.
Adam Husky.
Aye.
Darla Leclerc.
Aye.
Mark Bittner. Shannon Derby.
Aye.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Doug Brandt. All in favor.
Okay, on to number 2, propose amendment to previously approved PUD plan located at 1609 16th Street, submitted by Brian Warrant, applicant and owner. Greg?
The Plan Commission took a look at a proposal to amend this existing PUD, which, gosh, I don't have the full history, but was approved back in the 80s or early 90s for the development known as Neshota Shores. It was originally laid out to be a total of 5 condos or apartment buildings, 4 units each, 4 units each, on this site over on the West Twin River. To date, only one of the buildings has been built. It still stands there. It was one that was built without, it's shown as existing house 1. It doesn't have dedicated garage parking attached to it like the plan showed for the others in the future. So the Lorentz, the applicants, were at Plan Commission at a previous meeting with a proposal. There were some problems with that one in meeting the setback from adjacent property. And there's also a lot of utility easements of record that impact this property. So Plan Commission requested that they get with city staff, look at that, present a revised plan for this new I believe it's a 4-stall garage, which is now located in conformity with zoning code general provisions on setbacks. And I trust when they say can be built without impacting the easements. Plan Commission recommends approval of this amendment with and I've added to that because per the ordinance, this is a determination that comes here with the additional finding that the change as proposed is not deemed substantial, quote unquote, as that term is used in section 10.1.4 of the zoning code. And that is shown in the staff report here. And I would refer you to it. That's page 122 of the agenda packet. And that basically says that any subsequent change or addition to an approved plan, again, an approved PUD plan, shall first be submitted for recommendation to the Plan Commission. That happened. Plan Commission shall make its recommendation to the council. If in the council's opinion, the change or addition is substantial, keeping in mind how substantial is defined below, the city council shall call for a public hearing on such proposed change or addition. Without limitation to the city council's right to determine any other substantial change, a change may be construed to be substantial if it results in any of the following: an increase in density, still the same number of housing units potentially here, just now some indoor garage space. B, an increase in traffic congestion, doesn't seem to ring that bell. C, creation of service problems. Again, from a staff standpoint, we don't see that. Change in project design, architecture, or aesthetics. I think any amendment is to some extent a change in project design, but the architecture and aesthetics, again, I would suggest aren't being significantly impacted. City attorney may have some additional comment on that, but city council could, if you're inclined to agree with the Plan Commission's recommendation, you could either refer this to public hearing if you deem it to be a substantial change and act on it probably at the October 7 meeting, or accept the Plan Commission's recommendation tonight, approve that recommendation with the finding that the change is not substantial. Sorry to be so long-winded, but that's an important finding. And I'll defer to Sean to tell you the absolute truth as a city attorney.
With your interpretation of this, Greg, we really have 2 options here in proceeding with this. So we can either approve tonight or we can send it back to the Plan Commission.
By the way, the applicants are here and have sat through the whole meeting. If you have any questions, happy to address them. Either approved or go to public hearing. Yep.
Yep, okay, no problem, thank you.
Sean, just to reiterate, if we approve it tonight, there's no risks that we're in violation of any problems, then, because it isn't substantial?
I don't believe so, at least not how the statute's written. Of course, if we're concerned about the potential liability, then we can always go through the full proceeding, but in our interpretation of this, we agree with Greg's interpretation.
Then we are looking for a motion.
Approve tonight?
Which option? Would it be the one where it then goes to
Package.
public hearing, or?
One that says, change.
Okay. Okay. Mark, do we have a second?
What did he say?
Thank you, Bill. Any council discussion?
If that garage is built, does that put in jeopardy the viability?
Good question. I'd defer to the applicants on that. If you would, up at the mic so everyone could hear.
Need to modify that design without the attached garages, or?
You would at the mic, so folks watching at home could, yeah. We like to make TV stars out of everyone that comes.
My 15 minutes, I mean.
You got it.
I do have, where, we don't have the picture of what we do now.
It's in the.
It's in our
It's in the
packets.
packet, so they have it on paper. Yep.
So, I guess if anybody would want to look at this, this is where it's going, and this is the first one, then there would be one. This is really, yes, I don't know how I can do this. This would be the plan. So, this is the one that's here now. We're putting the garage here, and then these four next door. So, actually, the second one, no, won't affect the second one. I don't know if it will affect any of them. What's going to affect it in anything is I can't build any of them other ones because I have the easement for the power. And you got a meter box there, and you got a meter box there, so unless I tried to get that to vacate that, nobody would do that, so unless we move that easement, I can't see any of those other ones going on. So it's not the garage that's being affected, it's the easement.
I'd say the odds are real low of an increase in density ultimately, if anything else can get built.
What's that?
I'd say there probably won't be any increase in density because you probably aren't going to come close to the number of units that were on the original plan.
Anything else? Seeing none, this will be roll call vote again. Amanda?
Tony Similunas.
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister.
Aye.
Adam Mahusky.
Aye.
Darla Leclerc.
Aye.
Mark Bittner.
Aye.
Shannon Derby.
Aye.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Doug Brand.
Aye.
Tim Petrie.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you all for that. On to number 3. Yes.
Covered that. The easement, possibly act future building. We need housing in Two Rivers. Anything we could do to pave the way so you can put those other units up?
I think our electric utility director can address that because I'm assuming it's more than just a paper easement. It has infrastructure.
We've discussed numerous options, and at this time, as far as vacating the easement, it just wasn't in the cards. So possibly in the future, if the plans would come through that there was going to be more housing built, at that time we would look at it.
That easement has utilities in it.
Correct.
It's not-
Currently, it does serve the existing 4-unit or 2-unit, whatever that existing building is. So yeah, and then there's also a shed also on that parcel of land to the east. So the facilities feed 2 different transformers currently. So.
No, I'm sorry.
So it is possible, if they're truly interested in building something.
True, yes.
Work something out, right?
Yes.
Is it primarily electric easements there that are the issue?
There's telephone as well.
Okay. I guess I would just throw out there, and easy to say, it gets more complicated. For example, that property has sat for a long time underdeveloped. You could argue that it's well maintained, but it has a blight. It might qualify for a blight TID because the majority of the site you're precluded from doing anything with. If there was here we go again on TIF districts, but if there were a solid proposal to do development there, but for, oh my gosh, somehow the cost of relocating utilities, so those easements are no longer a necessity, which shouldn't be a ratepayer expense, so it should be a developer expense. That might be something that might be a good example of where you might look at a TIF, because right now it'll probably stay 4 units, although 4 units with garages for a long time, unless something can change with those easements. And more importantly, the utilities that utilize those easements.
Since the developers are here and the builders, I want to just leave the impression that if you come up with a plan, consider it. Is that fair?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Good development will move heaven and earth and electric utilities. Yep.
Okay, on to number 3, conditional use permit for a gas station located at 1421 Washington Street in the B1 Business District, submitted by Ace Building Service applicant and Thomas Christensen owner. Let's see, the Plan Commission recommended action was a motion to set a public hearing for October 7th, 2024 at 6.
This one actually is very straight up. You've got in your packet probably more than you need just on for background on the conditional use aspect. The Plan Commission did last Monday, the 9th, approve the site and architectural plans for a major expansion of Sovi's Auto Service, and they're shown really nicely in the elevations here. 3 new service bays facing the rear of the building, an expansion of their office and waiting room space to the north. To the west, excuse me, to the north of the existing office area. Site and architectural plan approval is final at the Plan Commission level, but because Sovi's also sells gas, you need a CU or conditional use permit for gasoline sales. Plan Commission recommends this. Basically, they'll keep selling gas out front like they have right along, just with a modified site plan. So I can tell you, and I won't be here at the next meeting, but Ben will, that, the conditions as set forth in the draft conditional use permit are acceptable to Sovi's. All we're asking you to do tonight, though, is set a hearing.
So we're looking for a motion to set that public hearing for October 7th. Thank you, Tim. Second by Darrell. Any council discussion? See none, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Scott Steckmeister.
Aye.
Adam Mahusky.
Aye.
Darla Leclerc.
Aye.
Mark Bittner.
Aye.
Shannon Derby.
Aye.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Doug Brandt.
Aye.
Tim Petrie. Bonnie Shimalunas.
Aye.
All in favor.
For that, on to number 4, modifications to driveway regulations in the zoning code.
Yes, the Plan Commission at its meeting last week revisited the zoning code regulations for driveways. Just for a little background, there's 2 sections of the code you need to look at, especially on new construction for a driveway. The Public Works section of the code has a section that addresses curb cuts and how wide your driveway can be, where it meets the where it meets private property, or where it meets public property, excuse me, generally at the back of sidewalk. How wide can it be? Then there are separate provisions, pretty common in most cities, in the zoning code on the actual width and other restrictions on driveways. Right now, we have some pretty simple language in there that's shown on the 3rd page of my memo, page 145 of your packet, that basically says maximum width of driveways on private property shall not exceed 35% of the lot width or 35 feet, whichever is less. However, any lot may have a driveway up to 20 feet, so that's sort of the minimum you can, even if you got a narrow lot. This issue came up initially with a new home that Jim Reef is building for a client over on Lincoln Street. 50-foot lot, 50 times 35% is 17.5. Even if you default to the 20% that's allowed, The request was for a 26-foot driveway. Person is, I think for aesthetic reasons, looking at 2 single bay doors for the new home. So that was a problem. But then we, as staff and Mr. Reef, as a private individual, took a look at some other driveways around the community, and we recognized, and it was shared at Plan Commission, that my term is there has not been consistent application of this ordinance. And frankly, people's expectations, especially with new homes when they have a big enough lot these days, is they build 3-car garages and they expect, they can live with the driveway narrowing at the edge of right of way, but they expect room enough for those vehicles and maybe room enough to get around the end of the garage and park a camper trailer or something there. So we had taken a look at several other cities' driveway ordinances at the September meeting, presented a fairly comprehensive amendment to the Plan Commission. But in light of the comprehensive nature of that and the immediate problems that we have, where we've got a number of driveways that have happened that for whatever reason aren't in compliance, the Plan Commission recommendation is shown on your agenda is to waive existing zoning code requirements for new residential construction and direct staff to prepare a more complete amendment to the zoning code language on driveways. So basically, I would interpret that as toss the existing regs out the window for new construction and in the meantime, come up with something. I'll admit I voted yes on that motion as well as a Plan Commission member, but on further review, I don't think it's good policy to just toss a regulation, and it probably couldn't be done without first amending the code anyway and going through a public hearing. So some additional staff time was spent looking at some other ordinances, including City of Oshkosh, City of De Pere, and we did find, although we should go back and do a more comprehensive review of the ordinance. It's not unusual, it's not unheard of for cities to allow driveways to be as wide as the garage, either as measured on the outside, or if it's not too often you see anymore, but if it's a flat face with the front of the house, well, you go inside and measure how wide is the garage. And typically that's wider than just the outer edge of the doors. With the addition of a provision that you can flare out the driveway so it's wide enough to get into a space tucked alongside the garage. So I would recommend the council set a hearing on that as an alternative with the additional provision that that option be referred to the Plan Commission for their input at the first opportunity. And what I'd really like is for you to give staff the latitude. If we can get a special Plan Commission meeting scheduled before October 7, we'll publish the hearing notice for your October 7 agenda. If this has to wait till the next regular meeting, it would fall to the October 21 agenda. And I will tell you, it's not the entire building community, but we did circulate this to Mr. Reef, who, along with his client, was at Plan Commission last week. And he indicated he felt this would be workable for him and his clients, and pledged to get us input on any future drafts. So we appreciate that. This part of the code, I think it's outdated. We're overdue. The Plan Commission looked at some amendments to this in 2022, and we never finalized those. So that's my recommendation. And again, our city attorney can supplement that if there are questions.
Any questions for Greg right now?
I got a question. How long ago was that written?
The existing language?
Yeah.
I don't know. All I can tell you is I have no recollection in my long tenure here of any major rewrite of that section. Matt has asked the same question, and we have not been able to find the legislative history on the driveway ordinance. I mean,
I was going to say, the reason I bring that up is because vehicles have changed.
have and families' needs, and
Right.
we don't like the streets clogged up with parking. This,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. So, and I he can certainly speak for himself, but at Plan Commission, and Adam heard this as well, Mr. Reef said, we don't have, as a builder, he doesn't have a problem with the fact that we narrow it down. Help me out, Matt, to a maximum, how wide at the back of the sidewalk?
E4.
Which on the spot?
4.1. I believe it's 30 fence of the lot width.
So that's a few, and it provides, this ordinance provides for a taper that has to start at least 5 feet from the sidewalk, so you're bringing it down. That means that the path you're taking across the public right-of-way where there are likely pedestrians, if there's a sidewalk, is narrowed. There's not like 3 lanes coming at you. It also means you're not consuming as much on-street parking. If on-street parking, probably not as important in newer neighborhoods like Sandy Bay, but you're leaving as much as possible, as much as reasonable for on-street parking. I think some of the better codes we've seen either have in the code, which is kind of cumbersome actually, or as a companion piece to the code, a user-friendly publication saying, here's everything you need to know about driveways, whether it's your curb cut and the things that happen in the public right-of-way, or whether it's what happens on your property. We don't have that. Certainly plan to recommend to the Plan Commission that we create something like that as a companion piece to a new ordinance. In the meantime, though, and it's not printed on the agenda, I just realized my alternative recommendation is set a hearing on the language we supplied from staff to be held following Plan Commission review and feedback on this change, because this was not in front of them last Monday.
So we're looking for that motion then.
But the builder did indicate, and the buyer at home indicated it would work for them.
Yes.
Or suggested.
And, you know, as we look at this further, you know, right now we don't see anybody that puts a 6-car garage across the entire front of their house. That'd be kind of bizarre. But I think we do want to put some things in, like a certain percentage of your front yard has to remain turf grass. There is side yard. You can't go any closer than, let's just say it's an interior lot, not a corner lot. You can't go any closer than 3 feet to the side lot line.
I got a corner lot, I'm just gonna see what
Non-conforming.
Yeah. Right now, we're saying in there, if you're flaring, well, on the corner lot, you may be the same. I'm sorry, I was thinking about if you want to add that parking space at the end of your garage, then we're saying you need 25 feet of clearance if you're on the corner or end. But as far as your driveway itself, well, you may be able to get your driveway within 3 feet of the corner, but the engineering's not going to allow you a curb cut that puts you that close to the corner.
Rick, we had discussed the street side yard being 25 feet.
Yes, that is in here. Street side yard, I believe for that parking space around the end of the garage as a setback.
Correct.
Yeah. If you're just building the driveway to the width of your garage, what's going to dictate it is how close can your garage be to the property line? Because you can only go the width of your garage. So it's not perfect. It's, I would say, a patch that's a better patch than throwing the ordinance out the window.
Still looking for that motion or a different motion. We need a motion. What Greg was saying, we would have a public hearing on the language of this, but following the Plan Commission review.
I would make a motion. I'll let someone else do it because I would go against what Greg does. If I were to make a motion, I'd make a motion just to waive the zoning code regulations and make sure that staff prepares a more complete amendment to the zoning code.
Okay, and I respect that.
And the reason I do that is I just want to ensure that they're able to get this done in a timely manner.
As in?
The concrete, yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure it was them and not Plan Commission or us or something.
Yep, sorry, yes.
Nope, that makes sense.
The builder and the homeowner.
Okay.
I want to make sure that they're able to get this done because it's a reasonable request. And we did talk about that at Plan Commission. It's outdated. We talked about when this was created. We don't know, but it's clearly outdated and there's a lot of new homes going up and I don't think we want to get in the way of it. I don't want to get in the way of it.
Okay. Do we have a second then? Thank you, Bill. Any council discussion?
Could I just ask a question?
It is for just new construction, FYI. It is not for anyone that wants to replace their driveway. Cannot just go do what they want. Sorry, it's new construction.
Sean, can you help me? Because I'm not saying in advocating my position, but can you help? As I understood from our discussion last week, there's not a mechanism in the zoning code to simply suspend by vote of the council. So this would still, my understanding, need to go to a public hearing. So it's not happened. That would not be effective tonight. It would be effective only following a public hearing, probably on October 7th. By the council. Now, you could still refer this to a public hearing, but I don't think suspending this rule or this regulation can take immediate effect.
Yes, that's correct. So the regulation is going to have to go through public hearing and then pass public hearing in order to be effective. There's no mechanism to temporarily suspend or to do anything in the meantime to effectuate that until a public hearing and passage occurs.
You can do it. It's still probably going to be October 7th.
I have a question. I guess I'm a little confused here. If the builder was there and the owner was there and they agreed to what we're suggesting, obviously the builder realized the timelines too on this, and we were able to, because I want it to be built. I agree. We need the housing.
Well, I'll stipulate to that. Yep.
And if we adapt to new changes in the driveway, and the planning commission can look at it the 7th and approve it, then we're home free and the guy can build, right?
The reason I went against it was because there's no guarantee plan commission get together at that time. That's not the regular meeting. So there's no guarantee that they will be there for that meeting to make that recommendation. There's nothing that got.
I can't guarantee that.
Right.
You're quite right.
There's nothing that got sent out to plan commission that guarantees that meeting happens.
That meeting only needs to happen between now and October 7th. If council so directs to hold the hearing, we can run the notice. But plan commission by statute is to advise council on any changes in the zoning code. And they talked about this part of the code last week, but this clearly was not part of that. All I can tell you is the best effort would be made to get them together, even if it's to have them meet at 5:30 on October 7th. That's all I can do.
Doesn't it seem like I would be cutting it close? Because the reason I'm saying is because then whoever's doing the flat work, is it in their schedule?
I can only tell you that, and
Can we make an exception in this case?
asked the city attorney. I don't believe that to be the case. My return email last Friday from Mr. Reef, and this is just as to his project on Lincoln Street, was, this looks acceptable for the short term. Thank you for this. I look forward to working with your staff on final long-term draft. And I did point out to him that it could not become official until the October 7 meeting. Now, again, council can certainly move to concur with the plan commission's action, but that's not the law in the city until you hold a hearing and adopt it. I didn't make that up. That's how it works. And that also was from a builder that's digging a basement for another new home at Sandy Bay yet this fall.
So right now, it's the way that we have the motion right now.
I'll rescind the motion and we'll put it Greg's way. We'll make life easy and hope the plan commission get together. So what we'll do is we will have plan commission take a look to update the regulations on the zoning code for driveways at October 7th or before October 7th to hold a public hearing on October 7th. Is that correct?
With the council's intent to hold that hearing on the 7th.
To hold that hearing on October 7th.
Yep.
That's the best I guess we can do.
Agree to rescind it and you agree with Adam's new motion.
However muddled that was.
If I have to buy donuts or pizza, anything legal, we'll get a quorum of the plan commission.
You want that again?
No, I got the second one.
Okay.
Good thing you changed it. Okay, any other council discussion?
I like that move, so I support it, and it's not because it's easy, it's because legally it's responsible.
Any other discussion? See nothing else, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Doug Brand,
Aye.
Tim Petrie, Bonnie Shimalunis,
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister.
Aye.
Adam Husky,
Aye.
Darla Leclerc, Mark Bittner,
Aye.
Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
all in favor.
The call for plan commission members will go out tomorrow morning. Lisa's back, thank goodness. You can't have her till she gets that. Information only.
Yep, information only, please.
Again, my earlier comment, please keep your next 2 Mondays open on your dance cards, and I will get back as far as when it's budget, we've got some things to talk about at a regular work session. I'd also, though, like to make sure we meet and address those concerns you heard from Mr. Gerbrow from the Arboretum. So trying to be responsive under the circumstances. Again, the next regular, I'm sorry, the work session will be one of those dates. And then the next regular meeting of the council is 3 weeks out, Monday, October 7. I will be out of town that night. So Chief Minor, I almost said Colmeyer. Chief Minor will be standing in as acting city manager for that. We do need the closed session tonight, and I just remind the council president, there is an additional topic under an added section of 19.851. Check that with the city attorneys today, in as much as there is a closed session listed on the agenda. The council can go into closed session then for the reasons stated by the chair in introducing the closed session. Did I get that straight, Sean?
That's correct. What's relevant here is what's announced prior to moving into closed session.
And actually, Scott, the president will be reading that inclusive of the additional topic to be discussed in closed.
Okay, so closed session, the city council reserves the right to enter into closed section per Wisconsin statutes 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specialized public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And per Wisconsin Stats 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. We will be discussing possible property acquisition, discuss possible assistance to development project, and consider whether to participate or opt out of a class action lawsuit requiring Aguas Foaming Products product liability involving Tyco Fire Products LP. Looking for a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Bonnie. Second by Tim. Any council discussion? Roll call vote, Amanda.
Darla Leclerc,
Aye.
Mark Bittner, Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
Doug Brandt, Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunis,
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister,
Aye.
Adam Husky,
Aye.
all in favor.
Hold on just a minute. Our mics.